Hi, everyone. I'm Stan Mallow, the paranormal yacker. My guest in today's show is Reverend Michael J. Carter. He is an ordained interfaith minister, a longtime UFO experiencer, a frequent guest on the History Channel's Ancient Aliens, lectures extensively on the topic of religion and UFOs, and he is an esteemed author. I'll be speaking with Reverend Carter about his book, Alien Scriptures, Extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible. Whitley Streiber, author of Communion, A True Story, considers Alien Scriptures to be the best book ever written on the subject. Reverend Michael Carter, welcome to Paranormal Yacker.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
You, Reverend Carter, are a man of the cloth. As I'm sure you are well aware, a number of members of the cloth preach from their pulpits the dangers of UFOs and extraterrestrials, as they view UFOs and aliens as demonic, and anyone who even talks about them are in the fast track to hell. At what point did you, so to speak, see the light and realize that what these preachers were saying was not necessarily so? Was it something you saw or personally experienced? If so, what was the catalyst that led to you looking at alien beings and UFOs differently than other ministers?
Great question. Let me give you the backstory, Stan. I was raised in the Baptist tradition. I'm no longer in that tradition anymore. And so as a kid, part of it was wanting to please my parents, as any child would do. But I was fascinated by religion, not only the Christian religion, but I just felt comfortable, whether I was talking about the Old Testament or talking about the Koran or what have you. But I had swallowed everything I was taught, and I did not believe in UFOs or anything like that. I just started watching Star Trek about 5 years ago. I'm 65 years old. I know most people say, well, what rock were you hiding under? I just wasn't into it. What got my attention was as I was getting older and the narrative didn't fit, whereas the narrative about Jesus, but also a loving God would not condemn people to barbecue for eternity. I just could not wrap my mind around that. And I met many good people, black, white, rich, poor, gay, straight. They were good people. It was hard for me to say, are these people going to burn in hell? Because they don't believe what I believe. I'm studying, I'm reading existential philosophy, I'm reading Camus, I'm reading Sartre, I'm reading on the occult, psychic phenomenon, meditation, that kind of thing. Still holding on to the teachings of Jesus, which I think are different from Christianity. And I had my first encounter. I went to Mexico for vacation with my girlfriend at the time, and we went to Chichen Itza and Tulum, right on the Yucatan, to visit the ruins and the pyramids and the fabulous. And, just where are they getting their information, the astrology, the astronomy? Where were they getting this? That night, December 28th, 1989, we came back. My girlfriend at the time said, I'm going to stay home. I'm exhausted. I had a little more energy. Got to JFK. It was freezing, coming back from 89 degrees, but I was invited to a party and I went. Was in Hell's Kitchen. I caught the subway down to Times Square, walked west towards the river where a friend of mine lived. And we got together and they were oohing and eyeing. I was nice and tanned and hair was lighter. And I wanted to gloat, to be honest with you, because they were freezing. Go home. No alcoholic beverages at all. If anything, I probably had too many deviled eggs. I'm a deviled egg freak. I love it. God forgive me. I love them so much. Ate those. I went home that night. I don't know to this day whether it was because I had to get up to go to the bathroom, but there was a presence in my room. I sleep on my stomach. I turned around and this person was there, only with a silver jumpsuit, with a head like that. And not gray, chalk white, with a huge head. There was a blue light around him or her, and there was a white light, like my room was lit up like Times Square. My girlfriend would not wake up or could not wake up. I pulled the covers up over my head. I mean, I looked this individual in the eyes, and I have never been as scared as I was. And I pulled the covers up over my head, and I got into a fetal position. I felt the temperature changed in the room like I was outside. And there was this whoosh, this wind, like I was outside. And this is at the Excelsior Hotel, still there, 45 West 81st Street between Columbus and Central Park West, right across from the planetarium. We lived in a residential hotel then. I finally got the courage to pull the covers down. No one was there. My girlfriend woke up. Well, I woke her up. And I was so agitated. And she said, I've never seen you like this. But she's a deeply spiritual and understanding person. She didn't ridicule me. I told a friend of mine who was an astrologer. She said, my God, she said, I want you, when you go downtown, to go to Alphabet City, St. Mark's Place. She said, just keep walking when you get to 4th Avenue and you're going to see a mural. And it's going to be a painting, street art. She said, tell me if what you saw was on this. Well, it was this person. Someone had painted or drew this person. I said, that's the individual I saw in my room. And that's what started the journey. Every full and new moon for about 8 months, I would get a visit. Now, I've seen other beings, which I have statues made of all the ones that I've seen. They would come. And they would paralyze me. Sometimes they would talk, but it would be like I had a stereo in my head, speakers. There was the mouths didn't move. It was telepathy. They just talk, and that's what got me. So immediately, Stan, because I'm wired, I'm not into propulsion systems and back engineering. Greater minds than mine can work on that. I'm always into the inner life, the spiritual, and so I wanted to know if they visited me on December 28th, 1989, and continue to. There are other beings, and we can get into that. I said, well, they must have been here in 1989 BC. And I started reading everything I could. And there were other ministers. Dr. Barry Downing, who's not an experiencer, but he's a colleague and a friend. He wrote a book back in 1968 called The Bible and Flying Saucers. Morris K. Jessup in the 50s died under mysterious circumstances, wrote a book about the Bible and UFOs. A woman by the name of Virginia Brasington from right here in my neck of the woods, she wrote a book called UFOs and the Bible. And so I started, this woman here, she's passed away. Her name is C.L. Turnage. She lived in Texas. She wrote a book called The Holy Bible and Extraterrestrial Transmission. So I had stuff to go on. And I wasn't as crazy as I thought. I mean, I went to therapy and stuff as well. And that got me on this journey that there's life in the universe. When I first started talking about this, there weren't even conservative preachers talking about the devil. They were just saying they don't exist. For me, conservative ministers saying it's the devil, that's evolution. Because before they were saying it didn't exist. Human evolution is slow, but now at least there's conversations about it. I have hope going forward.
How extensive were the negative responses you received from fellow ministers and even parishioners who disagreed with your views? And how did you handle those confrontations when they occurred?
These are great questions. There were a lot. And remember, I was very closeted about it because I didn't come out. I was doing research. I was even speaking at conferences, but I wasn't saying this happened to me. I was just saying this is what I've been led to study and this is what I've come up with. A publisher many years ago said to me, you got to put your big boy pants on. You're going to be helping people. You've got to get past the fear. I had people tell me that I was a nut. I had one woman try to get me fired from my current church position. She went to the board of trustees. She said, I saw him on television, on the History Channel, talking about little green men. Those are her words. And I'm not comfortable with that. This woman was also a big donor to the church. So we don't even have to get into church politics. She went to the board and complained, and the board said, he is not forcing this on us. He doesn't preach it from the pulpit. And who knows? He's probably right. So they got my back. But another colleague, I remember telling her about it, and she said, Michael, I believe that you believe what you saw was true. She said, but if you ever want to have a career in this denomination, you must never tell that story again.
In Alien Scriptures, you explore the possibilities that the Bible, Koran, and other religious texts contain clues of visitations from extraterrestrials. I would now like to explore some of them. To begin with, what are the clues you found in the Old and New Testaments?
Wow, so much evidence. I want to begin with that every civilization has stories, whether it's Native American, whether it's Asian, whether it's East Asian, in India, whether it's in China, obviously in the West. There are always stories of beings coming from the sky. Some of them acted very human. They lusted, they drank wine, they made love, they were very wise, they were belligerent. And so when I started thinking about Yahweh, one of the gods in the Old Testament, I said, he reminds me of someone who needs anger management. He's hyper concerned about who you marry. All the men have to be circumcised. He gets angry. That didn't seem really godlike to me. And I said, is this someone I really want to worship? In Genesis 6:4, chapter 6, verse 4, we are told that the sons of God saw the daughters of men and that they were fair. Now, if you're reading King James, it's different language, but this is what they're saying, that the sons of God came down to earth and mated with earth women, and they created another race of people, giants. But the word in Hebrew is Elohim. Elohim means plural God. So we're not talking about one individual, we're talking about a number of individuals. And I got that from the work of Zecharia Sitchin. And so that was the trigger. Every time an angel showed up, nowhere did it say the angels had wings. I'm not saying angels don't have wings, but I thought our ancestors were trying to say these beings could fly. And then I started looking at Ezekiel. Ezekiel sees this wheel, and Joseph Bloomrich in his book, The Spaceships of Ezekiel, former NASA scientist, used the metrics that Ezekiel gave us. And you can go on the internet, I think it's patented now. He's drawn a picture of what he says Ezekiel saw. So I started putting the pictures together, but I didn't see anything in it that made me take away someone's faith necessarily, but that was my thing. And then I noticed that every time an angel came, these men were superhuman, whether it was Samson, he had the strength, whether the birth of Jesus, whether it was John the Baptist, his mother Elizabeth. There was something special. And of course, it was all men, but that's the patriarchal society we were looking at. And so I started piecing these things together. And I said, okay, these 10 commandments say that you shouldn't kill. But then when I went to seminary, I learned that the 10 commandments, there were like hundreds of them. They narrowed it down to 10. But these were not for everybody. These were the Hebrew tribe. These were for the Hebrew people. Because if they were for everybody, then you wouldn't have gone into the land of Canaan and killed men, women, and children to take the land. So I started saying, okay, this was for a Hebrew person. You didn't sleep with your Hebrew neighbor's wife. You didn't covet your Hebrew neighbor's property. And it's not thou shalt not kill, it's thou shalt not murder. So I started putting this together. Flying chariots, reading other flying shields, people would call them in Egypt. And I said, these sound like Vimanas in the Mahabharata and the Upanishads. I said, this is not a coincidence. Jesus comes down on a cloud. He goes back to heaven in a cloud. Moses is following. We can go on and on. The pillar of cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night. And I just said, they're trying to tell us in the language of their day that these were gods. And because of their technology, they would, of course, seem God. It's like if you and I went back with our Apple phones, and heaven forbid we carried a gun, but if we had a weapon, we would be godlike to them.
What clues did you find in the Koran?
The first clue in the Quran was some of the same characters, especially Gabriel, another angel. The other thing about angels in the Old Testament, and even everywhere they go, women get pregnant. It's a great job if you're an angel. Everywhere you go, whether it's Abraham and Sarah or what have you. But the first thing in the Quran was when talking about Muhammad or whatever, they say, praise be to Allah, the Lord of the world. Not world, but worlds, plural, which made me think that somehow they knew that there were other planes of existence. That was my first clue. The second clue was they had beings called the Shin. They were like angels to me. They would appear, they could disappear, they would fly. Some of them were mischievous, some of them weren't. And I said, this is the same thing. They're describing beings that have what we would call supernatural powers. They could fly in the air, they could appear and disappear. And so that's what got me going regarding these beings are everywhere. They're everywhere. But yes, in the Quran, Lord of the world, they were called jinns. They were like not angels per se, but they were definitely beings who had powers that we would give to angels in our time.
In your exploration of other religions and belief systems, what clues did you find in their sacred writings that attest or alludes to the existence of alien beings?
Looking at the Mahabharata, the Upanishads, Upanishads, some of the gods were blue, and some people have said that the Arcturian race is blue. People have seen Arcturians. I've seen one, and they were a bluish tint to the skin, but they told stories about Vimanas, and these were flying machines, and they would have dogfights in the sky, and they had terrible weapons that to me sounded like nuclear weapons. And again, these gods were very human-like. They fell in love. They fell out of love. They drank wine. They were pretty much human except for these other powers that they had. And the Cherokee, of which I have a little Cherokee blood in me, in our folklore about the people from the Pleiades called the Star People. And we're talking about the Star Nation and that they're the creators of the Cherokee race. And so the list goes on. And it came to me that these beings, in the language of their day, it was hidden in plain sight, were trying to tell us that these were godlike beings, obviously because of their technology. And that is an affront to the Western mind, because if you can't see, hear, touch, taste, or smell it in the Western cosmology, it really doesn't exist. And people like me who said they've seen these beings or been on the craft or seen the craft, it is an affront. We call them aliens because we're afraid of them. Our government is now slowly but surely trying to say that they exist, and they know they exist. Of course, they've been knowing this for about 70 years or more. The language they're using, they are a threat to our national security. They hover over our nuclear installations and they shut down. Well, Ray Charles can see if they wanted to take over or conquer us, they could easily do that. Where's the threat? The only threat is that they're trying to tell us that we need to live in a different way, that we're going to blow ourselves up. We're not taking care of the planet. The only threat is to ExxonMobil, because if you use 0-point free energy, you don't need BP, you don't need Exxon. If they have this technology, they could probably heal a lot of the diseases we have, but we don't want that because there's too much money to be made. That's the only threat.
Can the dots be connected amongst different cultures and peoples when it comes to their description of what the alien beings who visited them looked like, where these beings came from, and what their goals or purpose were?
I think the dots can be connected in a general term, that all these cultures say beings came from the sky. Some of them taught our great ancestors how to cultivate a spiritual life, how to become more civilized. Not all of them. Some of them were like scientists. They just came here to observe. They're different races. The universe is teeming with life. But what connects them all is that all these civilizations are telling the same story. It's like the flood. When people were talking about, was there a great flood? Was there Noah's Ark? Well, Egyptian, Sumerian, Babylonian, obviously Judaism, Christianity all talk about a time about 10, 13,000 years ago when the earth was inundated with water. They may describe it differently, but that there was a great flood upon the earth. Well, the same thing can be said about these different civilizations trying to say this is how our civilization started, that beings came from the sky.
I'm curious to know about your interaction with the extraterrestrials. For how long a period of time have they encountered with you? And were there any special messages given to you?
My first interaction as an adult was December 28th, 1989. And that continued. The last visitation I had was the summer of 2019. Now, in between that time, there may have been a few years where I didn't see them physically, like they didn't come. And it was interesting because I was like, well, did I do something wrong? Because at the same time, I feared them only because of the bizarreness and how they could just appear. My life had changed. How did it change? Physiologically, it changed because I could get by with less sleep. I don't know how else to say it, but I felt like I was more intelligent in some ways. My hair and skin and nails grew extremely fast. My intuition was heightened. I was always a pretty intuitive person, but that actually heightened. So those were the physiological changes. All of a sudden, I had the need to study energy and Reiki and how to use energy in different ways. But how I changed, more importantly for me, was I was already working on these things, already meditating. I was already studying and doing yoga and things of that nature. But I just became a more authentic human being. I became more loving. It's like I became willing to risk. It was easier for me to start saying, I love you, or I'm afraid, or I just became more real. And I could look at the parts of me that were not my favorite parts of myself, but I could also accept that. And by accepting myself, I came to be able to accept others. I don't know if that answers your question. I
Yes,
will
yes, it
say this.
does. Thank you.
Yeah, I became more compassionate and authentic. Those are the words I'm using. So it was a spiritual transformation for me.
Now, what I'm going to ask you now, only because of something you just said about, they appear to you, then they don't appear to you with that. Did you ever get any thought, because you are intuitive and communication with them was telepathically, do you ever give any thought to the fact that even now, if you don't see them telepathically, they're sending messages for you to relate to the masses?
In answer to your question, no, it's more of a thought felt kind of thing, but that I'm to tell people that about love. That it's not just some willy-nilly kind of kumbaya type of emotion, a type of reality, that's what we're here to explore, that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. As hackneyed as that sounds, people have said it before, because there's nothing new to say. I mean, saints and avatars have been trying to tell us this for thousands of years, and we either don't treat them well or we just kind of poo-poo it. This is what it's about. The other great thing that I remember, I was meditating once, and this was after one of my visits, and I noticed that when I closed my eyes and I thought of something, whatever I thought of would appear. If it was a horse, it would appear. If it was a car, it would appear. And it went on for maybe about a minute or two. And granted, this is no great shakes, but it made me remember that what I see and perceive, I can create. If I want more love in the world, then I need to be more loving. If I need more friendship, I need to be more of a friend. If I need more abundance and what have you, I need to focus on what I want as opposed to what I don't want. And no, that's not going to force everybody else to, but that's not my job. My job is to be the example. And there will be people who want to hear what I have to say, and there will be people who don't. And that's okay, because that's what human life is about. But everything you ever want is on the other side of fear. And they taught me that. They didn't come out and say that, but I had to say to myself, Michael, these beings, yes, you had post-traumatic stress, and I went to therapy and all that. But these beings never hurt me. One time they hurt me, but I could tell it was by accident, and I asked them not to do it again. But these beings never hurt me. If anything, my life has gotten better. If anything, my self-understanding and the way I perceive life has gotten more insightful, more compassionate. So I had to look at my life and go, where else in your life, Michael, do you let fear run rampant because you really don't understand, whether it's the way somebody looks or what they think or whatever it could be, that you've got to find a way to handle fear.
All I have to say to that is a collective amen to everything you said.
We do have to do it, because the whole world is based on fear. And if you don't know how to handle it, you wind up losing control of your life and letting other people lead you where they want you to go.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to buy alien scriptures, extraterrestrials in the Holy Bible, or any of your other books, how can they do that?
They can go to Amazon.com. They can go to Barnes and Nobles. They can go to my website, which is michaeljscarter.com. If you click on it, it'll take you to Amazon. I want to encourage people to keep watching Ancient Aliens. Just last week, I was in Boston and shot a couple more episodes that will probably air at the end of the year. I'm going to Flint, Michigan on the 23rd, the weekend of the 23rd of September, to speak at a conference with Kathleen Martin and some other very, very interesting and talented speakers on the topic of spirituality and the paranormal. So it's been a busy, busy time for me.
Yeah, Kathleen Martin is a wonderful lady. I
Yes,
had the
she
privilege
is.
of interviewing her a few times, and you are absolutely correct. So the two of you on that stage together, I think it's going to be, the electricity is going to be strong.
It's going to
that
be
day.
wonderful. Yeah, it's in Michigan. I've never been to Michigan, so it's an adventure.
Reverend Michael Carter, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. It has been an absolute pleasure yakking with you.
Listen, anytime, Stan. Anytime you want to, give me a call.
I absolutely will. Thank you again. Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. To be sure you're amongst the first to receive new interviews when they're released and to have access to previous ones, subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, all you have to do is press the subscribe button on your screen.